Hey, I hope we're live, everybody. Let me know if there's any issue, if you can't hear or if you can hear, because it said there's a problem with the output, but then it says I'm live, and I think it looks like I'm live from my computer screen. So give me a 5x5 if you can hear me, and I think you probably can, and I've got my good buddy Duke here. Say hi, Duke.
Howdy, everybody. Big Sky howdy from that further western than where Aaron is part of Montana.
Yeah, the Billings part, the valley. We're down here in the valley.
South central Montana.
Yeah, it's not as beautiful as where you are, but it has its positives because it doesn't take long to get to the mountains. At least I'm not way over there by North Dakota.
Yeah, I'm like a lot closer to them, like literally 4 blocks. So,
Yeah, no
my
kidding.
nearest Bigfoot research area is 2 miles from here. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it takes me about 45 minutes to an hour to get to the mountains, but it, like I said, at least I'm not North Dakota. I have to tell everybody I was going to use the new computer, but I am unable to because it's not working. It looks like my chat box is also not working, so the chat's not coming through. I guess that was the output problem. But things just don't work sometimes, right, Duke? Isn't that the case?
Yeah, constantly. I spent a year and a half fighting with audio issues on my channel before I finally got it to the point where, hey, when I get on a microphone, you can like hear all of it now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we can be heard. Let me find out. No one gave me a 5x5.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah, we can. I just turned it up on my phone and I hear my voice going because of the lag. So that's okay. I can give us a 5x5. So then the chat's finally coming up. So the whole point tonight is not the whole point, but part of the point is Duke and I have been in our past lives vastly different athletic people than we are today, and we're not here to go, oh man, we wish we were that way or anything, but we thought it would be fun to kind of do a blast from the past, but Duke being his clever and creative self also will bring in the cryptid discussion into our old uh, blast from the past gym days.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be pounding some iron with Bigfoot here in a little bit. We're going to be showing everybody exactly how Bigfoot gets so buff and gigantic.
How he can lift a Bigfoot truck.
I'm there to tell you, brother, Bigfoot could lift up 5 semi-trailers if he wanted to, brother.
It's Sunday, 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 gym
Sunday,
day.
Sunday, Sunday. Yeah, the reason I'm doing the old wrestler really bad impressions is because back in the day when those guys were actually popular was when I was a gym rat. I was the assistant manager at Patera's Fitness Emporium in North St. Paul, and anybody old might recognize that name. It was Ken Patera, who was an Olympic powerlifting champion. Was in the '72 Olympics, which was interrupted by terrorism, and then he did a long stint in the WWE, which at that time was the WWF, the wrestling, as the arch enemy of Bobby the Brain Heenan. And he had several hilarious wrestling stories. So anyway, he opened up a gym, and I was the assistant manager and a trainer there. And it was fun because, first of all, anytime the wrestlers were coming through town, they would all stop by the gym because they had to work out anyway
Mm-hmm.
and say hi to Kenny, blah, blah, blah. And I get to meet all of them. And of course, this is like serious musclehead gym. So we had those guys, the local competitive power lifters, and prison guards from Stillwater was probably about 75% of the people that were working out there. So you didn't have a whole lot of the flannel, or I mean the spandex crowd there. I think it was open like 2 years before he even put in a little floor where they could do like aerobic training or something.
Okay, so this was the free weight place.
Yep, yep. This is the serious meathead gym where lots of heavy machinery and lots of heavy free weights. You had dumbbell racks that had dumbbells up to 150 pounders,
My goodness.
and I used them. So yeah,
Well, just to compare and contrast for fun, my brother owned a gym growing up, and it was at that time had the biggest free weight room in all of Montana. So
nice.
it was the same kind of thing, and there wasn't a lot of spandex. My brother was a bodybuilder for years,
There you go.
and then he was a power lifter, and those were my bit of my younger days. But I'll tell you, I let him train me on legs once, and I never went back.
You have spaghetti legs for about 2 days
Oh, it was
afterwards,
so
Aaron.
bad. It was so
Let me
bad.
guess. The first day you barely could even walk,
Yeah,
and the second and third day your leg hurt so bad you felt like somebody had beaten you on both sides with a canoe paddle.
yep. And I remember trying to walk down a hill at school
Oh
was
God.
worse because I was, going downstairs. Everybody talks about trying to do stairs, walking up or downstairs, or going to the bathroom after leg day. It's no kidding. But I was also more of a runner back then, and so I went and tried to run afterward, and I'm like, man.
Oh God. Oh God, Aaron. Really?
Yep, I don't mean right afterwards, but like the next day. And he's like, yeah, that'll flush it out. And I'm like, I don't feel any, I feel like I could barely move. It was just terrible.
Yeah, that'll flush it out if you've been doing this for like 3 or 4 years. Other, it's the lactic acid isn't the pain issue. It's all the torn muscle tissue that's the
Hmm.
pain issue.
Yeah, whatever. But I respected what he did as a power lifter. He became more of a power lifter because the bodybuilding stuff was too much with the no fat diet and the just having to lean out so much. It's a lot of work for. It's almost like women who do it. They start having the symptoms of anorexics because they have not enough fat on their bodies, and it takes a real toll. And so he got into powerlifting, and that way he could kind of gain have more of a bulk muscle thing. So what was it you were into when it comes to powerlifting, bodybuilding, which?
Well, I'll get to that in a minute. I was, like I said, I was a personal trainer there, so I had to have routines that would work for everybody. Obviously, the power lifters weren't needing personal trainers; they already know what they were doing. Um, there was a bunch of bodybuilders that would work out there too, and I think one of the more interesting situations I was in is where I was rehabbing somebody that had had a really bad leg injury, and she had competed for several years previous in Pan Am karate and won in her weight class. And she kind of got this major injury and been put out of action, and she was trying to rehab. She had like 6 months to go until she had her next, yearly prize fight. I want to win again, sort of thing. Get me back to where I can get my leg to work. So I had to come out with a really weird routine to keep like the rest of her body in good shape while she was essentially resting that leg, and then go from okay, now your leg can do anything. Let's get it back to as strong as the other leg, and have half a year to do it. Which believe me is like really not enough time, but I was super proud. I managed to pull it off. She was doing really good before she went in, and she actually won again. So, yay. But, she was probably one of the strongest women in the gym, and she didn't do much in the way of heavy weight training. So, you can get really strong without necessarily doing it that way. Most of her, training was impact, punching and kicking things, heavy bags, stuff like that, and she was really strong. If you gave her free weight, she could move them around quite easily. The bodybuilders, they're training to look a certain way. They're like sculpting themselves. They're replacing clay with muscle because they can't slap clay on and like glue it to their shoulder and then harden it up and go, hey, that's my new shoulder. That doesn't work. You actually have to grow the muscle to make it look like that. What you want that big chunk of clay on your shoulder to look like, make your shoulders bigger. So of course that requires a controlled diet and a very specific training regimen. And with the bodybuilders, they're always trying to sculpt themselves. So it's like, okay, my chest is big enough, but now my delts aren't quite big enough. My anterior delts need to be bigger, and blah blah blah. And they'll have certain groups, and they'll have specific exercises that target those groups. In addition to all the regular exercises they're doing to try and bring them up and make them bigger. Because there's like certain ways you can make your muscles bigger, and there's other ways you just maintain them. It all depends on your workout regimen.
Hmm.
Like power lifters, if you look at them, they don't look anything like a bodybuilder, but they're way stronger. Well,
Yeah.
why? Because they're not training to look a certain way. They're training to be able to do a certain thing, which is move one massive amount of weight once. That's what they're training to do.
Right.
So everything is about what your maximum lift is. So they have a completely different way. You never see them training small muscle areas unless they injured one and they're trying to rehab it. Otherwise, they're doing like the five heavy basics. They're doing especially squats, power lifts, deadlifts, bench presses. What am I forgetting? There's like another one. Your heavy basics. But a lot of the main
Deadlifts.
idea here is that it works so many multiple muscle groups all at the same time that it's a huge shock to your body. So your body releases everything that's necessary to regrow all these damaged muscles, and the carryover effect is it's releasing so much of it it's also growing the muscles you weren't even using. So that's how these power lifters are getting so gigantic. And they don't have slim waist or anything because they're lifting gigantic weight. They all have these huge power guts, which are just massive slabs of muscle, usually with fat over it too yet,
Hmm.
to keep their spine from imploding and shooting out their butthole when they're trying to lift, 500 pounds over their head.
Right.
So basically, two completely different ways of going about things. Now, me and a couple of the other guys in the gym weren't into bodybuilding, although we kind of looked like bodybuilders. None of us were taking steroids. We were lifting way more weight than they were. And we weren't built like power lifters. We weren't trying to get to those gigantic maximum lifts. We were essentially guys that were like really into combat martial arts and wanted to be able to cross train to get the maximum efficiency out of that whole thing. But you do want to be as strong as you can humanly get within the frame that you've been given. So this is a whole different tactical aspect to approach weightlifting from. It's not bodybuilding, it's not powerlifting. And we just called it strength training essentially. And I'm sure other people have got like different versions and variants and stuff of that going on now that they're calling the same thing. But any questions on how far I've got so far?
Well, no questions. I just find it interesting because I've never been a trainer, but I've trained in different ways. And one of the main ways was I was just a runner. And training for running is absolutely completely different than anything you're talking about. Well, you might disagree as a personal trainer, but I
No,
just
I totally agree with you
okay.
because I was into that before I got into weightlifting. I was doing martial arts for 15 years before I even got involved with weightlifting. I was already an instructor and everything. And one of the things I would do is go out twice a week and run 3 to 5 miles. But, that was it, just a couple times a week. So I could keep my wind down.
Yeah.
So in case you were in a fight and you didn't like immediately knock everybody out and you had to fight for more than like 30 seconds, you wouldn't get tired.
Right,
And
exactly.
interestingly, I
Endurance.
remember when I was doing that, I had my little brother with me, and he would always come along with me. I would run down to we had, the road we were on, I think was about a mile and a half. And there were two connecting roads at right angles and another one that crossed them. And it was about equal distance on all of them. So that was the long run. That was like 5 or 6 miles. And I would take off, and he would take off on his bike and try and keep up with me. He had a 3-speed bike. And my thing was to try and get back to the house before he got there on his bike. And I managed to pull that off every time. So yay me. But I don't have anything like that kind of aerobic capacity. But the interesting thing is that after I did all that martial arts and running training and that sort of thing to develop aerobic capacity and fast reflexes, that it had an effect on what was actually doable with my body after that. Like I could never build up my calves. You see some of these bodybuilders that have these giant calves. If you've been a runner, you can't do that. You cannot build your calves up that big because you've already developed so much of the slow twitch muscle in there. You just can't make your calves any bigger.
Not if you're going to continue to run, yeah.
Yeah, well, even if you don't run, because I found that out. I would have the calf machine with the entire stack on it, and be doing multiple sets of like 12, 15 reps, and it was like wasn't doing anything.
Hmm. I guess I have
And
pretty good calves. I don't know, maybe it's like a different natural ability, but as a runner though, I was a long distance runner for many years, starting well, I started running when I was just so I'll give a quick history and then we'll go back to you, of course, but I started running when I was 19 just because I was a smoker and did drugs in high school and I quit all that and I'm like I'm off to college. I got to pay attention now. I'm paying for this. So I'm like I dropped the cigarettes, dropped the alcohol, dropped the drugs and I wasn't a hardcore druggie. I smoked weed. I tried a few things here and there. But I'm like, nope, it's time to get real. And so I started running or started at the gym doing the stair machine and while studying. And that was really boring, but I would see people like running or doing other things and I was like, oh, maybe I'll try running and I worked at Perkins. I was like a long time Perkins. I've
Wow.
cooked at Perkins. Perkins is like IHOP or whatever if anyone doesn't know or
Yeah.
Denny's. I,
But on your feet, walking around
yeah,
all the
a
time.
lot. And so I worked at Perkins as a waitress. I've been a or not a bar. Sorry, I was a bartender at different places. I was a cook there at one point. I was a dishwasher at one point. I was a busser and a waitress. So anyway, at this time I was working at Perkins, and one of the gals there who was training in school to be a physical therapist was talking about running, and she's like, who cares how long it takes, just go and see how far you can go. And I was like, I'm going to do that. And I went and got on the treadmill, and I made it 2.5 miles, and my mind was blown. I was like, I ran, I don't know how fast, I might have been doing 12-minute miles for all I know. I don't remember. I just was in awe that my body carried me 2.5 miles of running, and it became this thing I wanted to do all the time. And I started signing up for races left and right, and I wasn't that good to begin with, but I stuck with it. And I tried to train for a marathon a little bit too early, and I was getting these injuries, and they're not serious, just like strained muscles where that it would hurt, and I couldn't pull through it. I just couldn't seem to get past it, and then it would move into another area, and so I'm like, I'm just not ready for these marathons. But I don't know if you realize this, I'm sure you do as a trainer, but if you stick with something for about 7 years, you can kind of finally become an expert in that thing, and even physically you can just start becoming faster, better, especially if have any bit of competitiveness at all. And in my 7th year of running, I was asked to be a part of this relay called Mount Hood to Coast. It was a Hood to Coast relay that was like over 200 miles, and like 6 people run it, and you relay over and over, and I had a total of 18 miles to do. And I was so nervous because I'm like, I have to do this over like 36 hours, so you don't really sleep, you just keep relaying your miles. And I happened to run it in 7-minute 10-second miles, the whole 18 miles, and I was like, I think it's time to run a marathon. And I ran my first marathon. I was only 4 minutes from qualifying for Boston. I ran my second marathon, and I qualified for Boston. And so my third marathon ever was the Boston Marathon.
Wow.
It's pretty
Wow.
fun.
I used to live up in Duluth, and they have an annual marathon there that starts up in Two Harbors and goes down the lakeshore and then ends up in downtown Duluth next to the harbor down there. And me and one of my friends would go down there 2 or 3 years when we were living near there and hang out near the finish line, not at the finish line, near it, and cheer them on. And it was always a guy in a wheelchair would always win first. He'd come in about half an hour before the fastest runner, which was cool. And a couple times I think it was just once we were actually there when the wheelchair guy came in. The other time we weren't there early enough. We handed him a beer as he went past, which he gratefully accepted. Most of the other runners and stuff weren't interested in the beers we were trying to offer them.
I usually took one. It's like, I remember one time I was like, is that beer? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, we were waiting about like maybe 50 yards from the actual finish line with a cooler with beers and just holding them out. Want a beer?
That's awesome. I would have accepted.
Well, there's a finish line right there. You don't have to pop the beer until after you get there.
Yeah.
You can carry the next few steps, But so it's not like we were trying to undermine them winning or anything. We were right next to the finish line. We weren't trying to get them drunk so they'd fall in the Lake Superior and drown or anything. That's not what we were up to.
No, yeah. I mean, I was running the Marine Corps, and I remember being like Marine Corps marathon with my sister, and she was a slower pace, and I was pacing her, so I was ahead of her, kind of hanging out. And somebody had beers, and I go, just like I said, I go, is that beer? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like 20 miles, and I'm like, yeah, I'll have some. Wait.
Yep.
Maybe it'll help me finish
side,
this 26
after you
miles.
run a marathon, you're so carb depleted, your body needs it, and that beer just gets sucked up instantly, and your body pulls all the carbs out of it. Negative side is you're probably really dehydrated, so you're going to get instantly drunk too.
Right. Well, I did get used to, most races had like a beer thing at the finish, and you'd get like a free beer just for running a race, especially these marathons. And so I usually, but they were like, what was that? There was some low calorie beer that was all the rage for so many years, and it was probably a low percentage too, like 4% or 3.5% or something. And so we would drink those and just be like, woo. But almost always after running a marathon, we'd go out later that night and do the marathon party. These marathons would always have some kind of celebration if they were of any size. Like, I was pretty bummed because the sad story about Boston is I fractured my femur, and I did not get to go do anything fun. I had to fly home, and it was absolutely excruciatingly awful flight home, and I ended up having to have surgery when I got home. And everybody says, well, what did you do? Step in a hole? And what happened was it was a really unfortunate and unusual stress fracture. And I just suffered it in a really bad place in the neck of my femur, and because I tried to persevere through it, and then somebody tried to pull traction to see if it was a pinched nerve, and I'm like, did you hear a snap just now? It just broke all the way through, and so yeah, it was a miserable flight home and one of the worst trips of my whole life. But at least I can say I did it, and I almost finished. I was only 8/10 of a mile from the finish before I finally was like, I can't cross another 10 feet. I was in so much pain. But I sent him a letter, and I told him what happened, and I said, I know I can't get the medal, but maybe I could get like a keychain or a commemorative shirt, and they just sent me the medal. And I was like, oh, well, you know what? I kind of pretty much covered it because I covered 2.5 miles on a fractured femur.
God. Congratulations. That sounds really painful.
Well, it tells you about the musculature, too, that I probably must have built up around the fracture to be able to carry on and even the 2.5 miles that I did.
Yes, and that's a point I want to get to, too. One of the reasons that I got involved in weightlifting, which I wasn't interested in when I was in high school or anything, was teaching martial arts, is that my little brother, who was 10 years younger than me, was then at the age where he was getting ready to get out of high school, and he started weightlifting. And I was already having back problems, like bad ones. I have degenerative disc disease. And it was getting really painful. And I started thinking, if I built up my back muscles more, that would take the stress off of my spine and it would hurt less. I should try this. Well, guess what? It worked.
Right.
Until I messed up my elbows and couldn't work out for a couple of years and unfortunately lost most of my back muscle. I was in a very much less pain than, at any point preceding and definitely after it. It's degenerative. It continues to get worse. So it gets worse every year. Pain gets worse every year. But, getting back to some of the other points you made, like muscle memory, and once you do something for 7 years, then you pretty much mastered it. Now, other people have pointed that out in other specialties too. Like there was somebody that had actually trained with Bruce Lee, and they were a master in their own style. And Bruce was really curious about it and asked him if they would teach him the technique so he could figure out, the differences between what he had been trained to do and what their styles were like. And there was more than one guy actually that this happened to, and they both said pretty much the same thing, that he picked it up within about 2 weeks. He could do all the same techniques they could do just as well as they could do them within 2 weeks. And that was because he had spent so many years training in other martial arts and mastering them that anything that was similar, he could pick it up so fast. It was like mind-boggling. It looked like magic, but no, it's just because that's all this guy does for 12 to 16 hours a day for 20 years.
Then that would make more sense as you come into something new, but it's like some of the moves are so similar, I would assume.
Yeah, you've already got all of the basic techniques down. You already know how to transfer your body weight, how to make fast movements, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. All you're doing at that point is just looking at the physics of how they're moving, exactly what their body dynamic is. And, some of this stuff he's probably like mentally upgrading it like Elon Musk or something while he was looking at it.
Just put in the Neuralink.
Yeah, exactly. I have a better way of doing that. But, so getting back to the whole bodybuilding and cryptid tie-in thing, the kind of training that we were doing is probably the closest thing you can imagine to what Bigfoot does. Now, a lot of people that see these Bigfoot tell you that they're built like bodybuilders. They're just massive, massive shoulders, massive chests. Some of them have thick waists.
I remember seeing the picture that you had of the guy's back, and he had really big traps.
Oh God, yeah. Their traps and lats are so big that it doesn't even look like they have a neck. They actually have one. It's really short and bull-like. But yeah, their traps come up to like their ears because they're so big. They're ridiculously huge. And then they've got the correspondingly enormous deltoid muscles too, so they look even wider than they actually are. But so how does Bigfoot train? Well, we've actually gotten reports from people that have seen them doing weird things. I was just talking to somebody earlier that was talking about a law enforcement person was hearing this weird noise and stopped to check it out, and it sounded like people fighting. And so he was looking, and he could see these two shadows. It looked like these two people were picking each other up and slamming each other into the ground, one after the other. And so he put a spotlight on him and was looking at him and realized those aren't people. There's a couple Sasquatch over there having a tussle. They're picking up each other and slamming each other into the ground. Now, we heard this sort of stuff from Kevin about how competitive they are. And we've heard this from other people that interact with them. Like one of their favorite things to do, since they don't have Nintendo, is to compete with each other. Who can run from here to there the fastest? Oh, can you climb to the top of that tree? Well, I can do it faster. I can lift this bigger rock than you can lift. Super competitive about everything. So this is like their speed and strength training all the time.
Right. And they're not drinking beers.
And they're not drinking beer, and they haven't got anything else to distract them other than feeding their bellies, which with their capacity takes probably 2 hours out of their 24-hour day. And then they got the rest of this time to kill. So what are they doing? Well, it's one of the reasons they're so gigantic. And this parallels the kind of training that we were trying to do in the gym. And what we were doing that we were calling strength training was like basically superhero level training. You had to already be somebody that was an experienced weightlifter, that was either like, intermediate bodybuilder or intermediate power lifter to even survive doing this. And it wasn't plyometrics or anything. What we were doing was very little machine work. It was mostly free weights.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could do something with dumbbells instead of a barbell, you always use dumbbells because it's more difficult. That's what you want. And the whole thing was predicated on total tonnage per hour. You essentially got 1 hour to work out, and you got to add up all the weight that you lifted during that entire hour and see how many tons you lifted. And the idea was to lift more tons each time than you had lifted before.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, oh boy, did that work.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to now lift, instead of doing one lift with a really heavy weight, or lots of lifts with smaller and intermediate weights to sculpt certain muscle groups, you're doing really heavy movements with free weights for reps. Because you're trying to get a maximum. We figured if you didn't get at least 20 tons, you weren't even trying.
So, I think there's something to the body weight movement too. Like body, there's a lot of exercises now that we're learning as human beings that you can use your body weight to really get a very good build of muscle. And it sounds like they're using body weight too. I know one is maybe picking up the other, but they're still, it's a body weight maybe type of exercise.
Yeah. Well, they're so inhumanly strong anyway. I mean, there's witnesses that have seen them go up steep inclines or climb up into trees or something, and they can literally grab something capable of holding their weight above them and chin themselves with one hand.
Hmm.
Like easy, no problem. They run up a steep slope, they're hardly even using their legs. They're grabbing the tree trunks in front of them and hurling their body forward with their arms.
Yeah. And they can obviously unroot. Can they unroot trees or?
Yeah, yeah, we got plenty of examples of that. Now, there's been a couple of reports from here, up in Alaska, Vancouver. People have taken pictures of them where they've taken a whole tree, ripped it out of the ground, and shoved it point first back into the ground again, root ball up. We found, when Kevin was up here in 2019, he found an X structure where both trees had been uprooted. It was made into an X, and both trees had the root system up.
Mm-hmm.
That don't happen naturally. You think
It's,
trees are turning cartwheels and they got caught halfway through? No.
even a dead tree for a human isn't. I've done it. I've tried to pull them out. Even a dead tree isn't very easy, and you've got to work quite a bit. So if it's big enough, and even dead is hard, but alive, pulling them out of the roots is obviously for me unthinkable.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just, no comparison to a human. They're insanely strong. So no matter how strong I got in the gym, I wouldn't be strong enough to go lay the smack down on Bigfoot and drag him back in again. So that was out of the question.
No, that's certainly, and wouldn't it? Yeah, I wouldn't even imagine trying to get to that point. But you think about all these guys that get on steroids and stuff too, and that was one of the problems with my brother and his gym is a lot of these guys were, no offense, they weren't stupid, but they're kind of meatheads. They're like, we got to get big, we got to get big, and
Yeah.
steroids kind of made a big,
Yeah.
they were pretty
Yeah, there
big
was
and
nobody on our whole group that were doing the superhero strength training. There was nobody that was a steroid user, and they couldn't have done it. And the reason is because the steroids facilitate you to grow muscle tissue faster than your connective tissue could take it. So your body will literally tear itself apart because your muscles will get so strong that you're capable of doing lifts that all your tendons and ligaments can't take. So
yeah.
all of us that were doing this ridiculous strength training, we were all natural, and we had all been, for years lifting heavy weights already, doing this all the time. So when it got to the point where we were going to try this crazy crap, our ligaments and tendons were well ready to take it. If you had just gone from, neophyte to, fairly pumped up dude that can lift heavy weights via steroids in a year and a half or something, you would have just ripped yourself apart.
which is what you saw. My brother tore many ligaments and had several surgeries, and then the worst one that he was going to do one last power lift, and I can't remember, he was in his 40s, but it was going to be his last big lift, and he was going to retire. And guess what? He tore the his pectoralis muscle. He didn't tear the ligament this time. He tore the muscle away from the ligament, and so there was he retired himself before he could even finish. So it was one of the worst injuries he could have suffered. And anyway, he's got a funny his elbows stick out funny because of all the surgeries he had. He has, when he rubs his nose, he has to do it a weird way, and you can tell the guy's just been through lots of stuff. And he played football, so he had ACL surgeries, and the things that we put our bodies through just to try to be number one. And that's what I was doing as a runner. And I'll tell you guys, that's why I had that fracture, was because I wanted to be the thinnest, fastest runner, and that created other problems like bone density problems. I had weak bones, and I didn't believe I had an eating disorder, but when you think about the amount that I was running and the fact that I'd restrict a lot of calories to stay thin and running 50 miles a week, it was essentially an eating disorder. And so they have what you call the classic female triad, where you have osteopenia and eating disorder, and you overexercise, and you see it, and it's common. And so I'm grateful that I've come out of that. Now I do lift. Now I do what's called boot camp. It's not boot camp like I'm not in the military, but it's a boot camp style workout. And I'm very strong, and my bones are really strong now, and I'm much healthier than I was back then in my 20s
Yeah.
when I broke my femur from running, just from running.
Yeah, I know it's interesting that sort of parallels some of the stuff that happened with me too, because the only reason I got into weightlifting is because I was already having back trouble, and then getting into weightlifting pretty much alleviated it for wow, way over 10 years until I blew out my elbows working at the post office. Are you there?
I am, but I muted myself for just a second. Sorry. I was responding to Brenda, who reminded me that also this stuff can cause organ damage. The what do you call it? The steroids can
Yeah,
cause
oh, absolutely.
severe
Well,
organ damage.
steroids are essentially, some of the other weird things they got now just excluded. It's synthetic testosterone, essentially. Um, so that's really bad for your heart to have the short version. Yeah, it's like having lots of extra cholesterol in your system all the time. It's not good for you. Plus, it raises your aggression levels,
Right.
and keeps your heart rate higher than it should be and whatnot. And that was one of the things I found out when I was doing that strength training thing. It it was turning me into a superhero. I mean, like literally, it was weird. I wasn't doing any steroids, and I was drinking beer and stuff like that. And I had so much energy, I didn't want to sleep. I
Right.
could barely force myself to sleep, and then like 2 hours later, I'd want to get up and do something again.
Yeah, I was like that too. When I was a runner, I would get up at 4 in the morning and I'd go for like a 10 or 12-mile run, and then I'd come home and maybe lay down for another hour and then get up and go. Like I had that kind of energy too. I could just get up at some crazy time of the day and be like, I'm gonna go running for miles and miles, and then I'll come and take another hour nap. Yeah, just like that.
So here's some more. Here's another Bigfoot anecdote since we're tying in cryptids and bodybuilding. This is a classic one of, again, somebody seeing two Bigfoot in a tussle. It was a hunter out in the woods and heard this racket going on and snuck around this little bush and tree to see what was going on. It turned out there was like a 7.5 foot and a 9 foot Sasquatch that were arguing with each other
Mm.
and pushing each other at that point. And there was a dead deer laying there, and he assumed that's what they were arguing about. And then one of them just whacked the other one and knocked him flat. And then the one who had just been knocked flat got up and did the same thing to the other one and knocked him flat. And they went through a couple rounds of this. And finally, the bigger one must have got tired of it because he got up, he picked up the deer, and whaled the littler one so hard that he basically did a flip and landed on his face. And then he threw the deer over his shoulder and took off in the woods with it. And the littler one got up and took off in the woods after him, leaving the hunter there with like PTSD forever, seeing something like that. But that's Bigfoot bodybuilding,
Yeah. Imagine like neither of them are getting hurt. I mean, they must have. Would you imagine that they would probably have stronger, maybe thicker bones too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not only that, I know somebody that's connected to the government in another country that actually has to do investigations on missing persons and whatnot, and they have infrared capability. There's satellites that go over every so often that they can get an update from and try and help them find missing people. Because if they're wandering around in X and X location, they're gonna theoretically, unless they're in a cave or something, you can see the little blip of their glowing heat mess from satellite. We've been able to do that
Oh,
for a
okay.
long, long time. So that's one of the things they use for finding missing people. If they've been missing more than a couple days, they can take one of the passes overhead from the infrared satellite and look at
Right.
it and see if they can spot them. So obviously they're spotting these other things, and those other things, interestingly, have a much darker heat signature than humans or normal animals do, which leads one to the conclusion that they're a lot denser muscle-wise than
Right.
we are,
That makes
which is
sense.
also why they can run around without shoesies and jackets on in the winter, because they
Right.
ain't getting cold.
Right. They're built
They
for
have
it.
problems with too much heat, not too much cold.
Well, okay. So remember when I showed you that map that was not very accurate, but kind of fun because it showed where all the different cryptids were all over the country.
Yep, it even showed the flathead monster.
Yeah, I was like, never even knew that there was a flathead monster, and I think I brought it up with you last time. But is there a Sasquatch style creature that gets closer to the desert or the equator? Would you, or is there they just change it? I don't mean they change into, but the cryptids change. It's a different kind of cryptid down there. No Sasquatch down there.
There's of all the countries in Central and South America that I've looked into, every single one of them that I've been able to find information from has Bigfoot. They just call
Okay.
it something different, same critter. Some of the ones in South America, they've got some other weird things down there that we definitely don't have up here. Mapinguari, which is probably one of the presumed to be extinct giant ground sloths still wandering around down there that they run into every so often. But they've also got different names for Bigfoot all the way through, Central and South America.
Right.
As a matter of fact, they used to have there was some weird cult or something at one point in Mesoamerica and Central America that had a ruined city of the monkey god. So I don't know exactly what that was all about, but let's, yeah, maybe we should leave it that way. But anyway,
Monkey god. It makes me
yeah,
think of the
yeah,
like the baboon. Was it a baboon? It wasn't a baboon. No, it was a orangutan in the Jungle Book.
yeah, the big nasty orangutan that they made look more Gigantopithecus like for their latest version of it.
Oh, I haven't seen.
Oh yeah, they just made it look, again, a giant orangutan. Well, that's what Gigantopithecus is supposed to be. So let's,
Okay.
make the orangutan look more Gigantopithecus like than orangutan like for our, you know, not animated version that they did. That was all CG animals and stuff in that one.
I was gonna try to pull up the picture of the map. But I don't have it because I put everything to the new computer, so all the backup stuff is on the new computer, which I is working great, but I can't stream from it yet. Isn't it fun to like the old technology is bad enough. Now you gotta learn the new technology. However,
Yeah.
I think it'll be much smoother once I get it. But it was a fun map. It was. I could probably pull up my MeWe and kind of talk about it. But it was fun, but totally inaccurate because it didn't even show Bigfoot being in Montana.
Yeah, there's only one state in the union that doesn't have a Bigfoot report, and that's Hawaii.
Right.
And Hawaii has Menehune. They have the little people there. That's a well-known thing in Hawaii. So I guess, Bigfoot can't swim that far or whatever, but the little people are there.
You know what I can do since I can open my MeWe is I can get your old picture of you that you sent me went back in the workout days, unless you
Oh
don't want me
yeah,
to. Whoops.
yeah. Oh no, that's fine. This is like before I was peak strength. This is probably, I don't know what, mid 90s or earlier 90s maybe.
The sad thing is I don't have any picture. I don't have my Facebook had all these images of me. Um, my Facebook was had all this stuff of me when I was younger and running. And the problem is that my Facebook was taken down, and I was stupidly didn't count on losing all those images, and I lost a lot of images that I had. So there it is. There's a picture of you. I think everybody should see it here in just a second. There's a picture of you from back in the day, and I may have a picture of me from back in the day, but just imagine me like I look now, but with really, really skinny arms and a younger face and better hair.
So what you're saying is you've gotten hotter over time. Got it.
I think so. I mean, back then I had better hair and younger skin,
Better.
but
You can all sorts of cosmetic things with hair. That's not a concern. Keeping
that's
it up
true.
to
I'm
the
just
edges.
kind of,
That's just the paint job on the car. That's not the car.
yeah, I'm just kind of lazy about it now. Let's see. I want to find this cryptid one. Gosh, now I can't. Oh, I sent it to you on email. That's why I can't find it. Oh, dang it. Oh, I was going to pull that up.
It's a good one. I've seen another version of it, which is like, I think it was made for a bigger poster or whatever, so it's got more cryptids from different parts of the country crammed all over it.
Hmm.
But most of them are, a lot of them are just like, a monster that was seen in a certain area over a week or two. It does, like maybe in the 70s or something. And there were so many reports of it then, but after that, nothing. And it became like a local legend, and it turned into like a yearly festival, and they have a parade, and like Mothman Days or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
different ones in different places. And so a lot of those are listed on that cryptid map. I think it was kind of like, if you're touring the U.S., here's the areas where, there might be cryptid festivals when you're there. And you can go stand next to a statue of Mothman. Ooh, fiddly dee, that would be exciting. My blood pressure will go through the roof, and I'll probably stroke out with all the excitement.
Yeah, I don't think that would be too amazing for me, but that's because, in my, what am I doing? I'm typing on the wrong thing. I've got two keyboards out because I'm doing stuff on the old computer and the new computer at the same time. I'm really, trying to do too many things at once, but I was thinking I'm going to find this thing and I want to show people because it's really fun. But again, I was
When are they
surprised.
going to build you a newsroom with a jumbotron behind you and all that kind of
When
stuff so
are
you can
they
look
gonna
like
do? Well,
Infowars?
I'm trying to come up with something creative for my background, and somebody said, well, just get a green screen, and I'm like, yeah, but then I've tried a green screen, and you know what happens with the green screen is like I end up just it doesn't work. It's like too wrinkled or something all the time. Can't ever get it
Wrinkle
to
screen.
work. Yeah, it doesn't work
There's
if it's
some
wrinkled.
peculiar distortion in the background. Have you got a cloaked Bigfoot back there or something, Aaron?
It would be fun. Okay, I've got the picture now. I've got to try to figure out how to make it so people can see it. Oh boy. It's a rough life, this one of technology. Cryptids in America. Anyway, back to these weightlifting
Yeah, so what do these different
Bigfoot.
cryptids do for working out when they can't get access to a gym because we have them blocked and we're not letting them in?
That's right. It's
So,
been locked down.
yeah. Well, like I said, for the Sasquatch, it's pretty obvious between the reports that we've gotten from people witnessing them doing things and then other people that have actually interacted with them and watched what they're doing, that they're just naturally that way. They're hyper competitive with their siblings and the rest of the members of their little family or group. And, just like kids, oh, I bet I can run down this beach faster than
Right.
you can. No, you can't. Oh, I bet I can pick up this bigger rock than you can. No, you can't. Watch me. I can pick this one up. I can make an X structure that's 6 stories tall. Ha ha. Hey, look, somebody made a 6 story X structure. Quick, film it.
So, were you? I'm interrupting probably. You probably had more you wanted to say.
No.
Oh, okay. So I've got the map up, and you can see in Montana. I've got it zoomed in a little bit. That all we have here apparently is the flathead monster and the Shunka Warakin. Have you heard of that? Shunka
Uh,
Warakin, some kind of fox or
it,
wolf
no, I
looking
think
thing.
that's supposed to be kind of a dire wolf type thing, if I remember right.
The Pope Lick monster. That's a Baphomet guy if I ever saw one. He's even doing the Baphomet symbols.
Yeah. Yeah, and bizarrely enough, the Pope wasn't there, and it didn't lick the Pope. So I don't
I
know.
was gonna say, how did he get that name?
Yeah,
Clever name.
it's the name of the place where they saw the monster. That's where most of these. See, Pope Lick.
Oh,
Where's that one in Iowa? I can't remember where that one's
let's
from.
see. 20. Well, it's in this state right here, which I think might be Kentucky, if I had
Okay.
to guess. It's shown in Kentucky for that one, which again, it's showing states that it's not. It's showing states that don't even have these. It's like Wyoming and Colorado and New Mexico apparently don't have any creatures. So North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wisconsin, and Michigan, and what's the one that's like a glove? Is that Wisconsin? Anyway, it's
Oh, the oven mitt? Yeah, I think that's part of Michigan, isn't it?
and then Illinois. It's showing in Ohio. None of these states apparently have them, but it's still a fun map. I think
Yeah,
you've said
no,
you've probably
Michigan
seen a
has
better one.
dogmen all over the place, but no, they're not on the cryptid list on the map. Sure, right.
What's in Lake Tahoe? I guess that's number 30. That's Tessie. You got the Tessie Tahoe
Yeah.
monster.
I think we were talking about that. Like, if you get far enough north from the equator, pretty much any big lake or body of water has reports of some kind of a lake monster in it. And
At least they did include the Flathead Lake monster because it's a huge lake up here.
yeah, yeah, it's the biggest lake in Montana. It's like, it's a mud puddle compared to Lake Superior that I used to live next to, but it's a
True.
huge lake for a lot of other states.
Well, darn, according to this map, we just don't have Bigfoot in Montana. Guess you'll have to search somewhere else,
Yeah,
folks.
I guess I'll have to move to another state where there's actually Bigfoot and quit finding all the ones around here
I know.
that don't ever look at the maps and don't realize they're across the border
Yes,
from Oregon and Washington.
they're not. Yes, what are they thinking? Northern Idaho also does not have Bigfoot. It has the paddler.
Paddler. I think whoever made this map was obsessed with lake monsters, to be honest with you. It must have
That could
never looked
be.
at Squatchable.com or BFRO report sites or anything to find out,
Oh,
well,
Squatchable.
there's Bigfoot reports in every state. And some of them you wouldn't expect would have a lot of them, have really a lot of them. Oklahoma, between sightings and possible encounters, I think they're over like 1,200 now.
Yeah, of course. I would imagine. Yeah, it's anyway. Like I said, it's inaccurate, but it's kind of a fun map because I had never heard of a lot of these. I'd never heard of Nobby or the Ozark.
Nobby.
Yeah,
I haven't even heard of Nobby. Where's Nobby?
Nobby is. Oh, geez, I'm on the spot now. Looks like Virginia.
Okay, way over there on the East Coast somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, North Carolina. My bad. Nobby's in
Nobby.
North Carolina. You've got the Ozark Howler of Arkansas and Missouri. The Wampus Cat in Tennessee. And then there's some birds on here. Mothman is in West Virginia. The Mogollon monster of Arizona. Never.
That's Mogollon. That's another Bigfoot. The Mogollon monster is just another local name for Bigfoot. The Mogollon Rim over there is about 7,000 foot altitude, and people over there run into Bigfoot all the time. And that's just the local name for it, Mogollon monster.
Oh, I guess I had the wrong state of thinking I had Ohio, but that must have been like Illinois. The Loveland Frogman is in
Yeah,
Ohio.
yeah, that's a peculiar one. That was a frog-looking, looked kind of like a giant frog type thing that a whole bunch of people saw. Again, it was one of those flaps where a few witnesses saw it over a short period of time, and then that was it. Nobody ever saw it again.
And then there's not just Tessie and Nessie, and there's also Chessie and Bessie.
Bessie. Well, I used to live right next to Lake Pepin, and we had Peppy over there.
And Champ. Then there's Champ, who's also
Yep.
some kind of sea
Yeah, up in
monster.
Canada, they got a bunch of them. They got Champ, and they got Ogopogo over in Lake Okanagan. And you go up into Alaska, there's Illy, who's in Lake Iliamna, which is, again, another giant lake. So all
Yeah.
these giant lakes up in the north, they all have, lake monster stories.
Well, yeah. So, and Caddy. Caddy is in
Caddy,
Oregon,
yep, yep.
or probably
And
more than
there's
Oregon, but
that one that a few people have heard of over in Scotland. What's its name again? Oh, Nessie.
right. There's Nessie, Tessie, Chessie, and Bessie, and Champ, and
There's one
Caddy.
in Scandinavia called Stussy. I think they have several of them there too.
And I don't know if this is the Fook monster or the Falk monster, but he looks kind of like Bigfoot too, and
The
he's in
food
Arkansas.
monster. Yeah, actually, I've had a guest on my show, William Lunsford, who's not only encountered the Fouke monster because he researches right in Fouke, Arkansas, but he's also run into the Ozark Howlers there. So there you go.
So are those like a what would I
Fouke
guess a
monster
cat of
seems
some
to be
kind?
like a
Oh,
sub-variety of a
no.
Bigfoot type thing, and
Mhm.
the Ozark Howler is like no clear description of it. Varies a lot, and appears to be some other cryptid, probably bipedal, that could be mistaken for a Bigfoot, but isn't.
Oh my gosh, it's already been almost an hour. Look at us go. Beast of Busco. The Beast of Busco is in Indiana. That looks like almost like a armadillo. if this is even accurate. I don't know.
Those could have been misidentifications of Mike Pence.
Yeah.
He was the governor
Dun,
there for a
dun,
while.
dun. I like this Pugwudgie guy in Massachusetts. He looks like a little. He looks like a little person.
I've done whole shows on those little guys, and they are the most dangerous little people you could possibly run into. They started in Massachusetts and spread all over the country. When, according to legend, they got into a fight with the Indians, the natives there, and a giant there, Moschops, who they ended up actually assassinating with poison later on.
Oh,
But initially, the giant spread them all over the area to get them away from the humans there that he was friends with. And some of them came back in, and other ones apparently went other places. And a guest on from Texas who was on twice that had them trying to get to his girlfriend, who they had tried to kidnap her from her cradle when she was a baby.
ugh.
And apparently they had messed with her mom before that. And now they're trying to get at his girlfriend's kids. So, yeah,
Jeez,
these
scary.
things are really nasty and don't like humans whatsoever, can't be trusted.
Yeah, and you said they live in the. Oh gosh, the Priors, maybe Prior Mountains.
Most Well, no, that's a completely different thing.
Oh,
Those are the little people that live around here, and they're as long as you're respectful and you stay away from them, you're all just fine. Puckwudgies will follow you around and try and kill you because they're
oh,
they
so
hate
they're just
humans.
worse.
Yeah, they hate humans. Those are the worst of the goblinoid little people races. Um, the ones around here, the Namirigar, Narumbi, those little guys, Pedro from the Pedro Mountains where they found the mummy there. They're dangerous if you make them mad. They're incredibly lethal if you make them mad, but they're not out to get you. So that's the difference. Puckwudgies are out to get you. The
Yeah,
Nurumbi aren't.
just cause, huh?
Yeah, just because you're a human, you're a target. Nurumbi are like, get out of my area and I don't have to kill you. That's the difference.
Think Strong says, "Where is Glag with multiple G's? Is that a creature?"
Yep. Flag is Kevin's buddy. I don't know where he is right now. He's last reported wandering around up here in the Pac West somewhere. They don't know where borders are. So
Yeah.
he could be in Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, somewhere out here. He's got his family with him. The last time he was encountered was summer 2019 up in Coloma, where Kevin got to see him and his two at that point over 10-foot tall sons, and one newborn that was one of his son's kids, I guess. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, they wander around a lot. I have no idea where exactly they are, and they don't exactly like drop me a line and go, "Hey, Dick, visiting Utah. Here's a picture. Is that a postcard?"
He says that I need to listen to those encounters because they're the most moving encounter. It's the most moving encounter. I assume, Think Strong is a he. So offense if you're not. If you're
Yeah,
binary, I'm so sorry. Just kidding.
yeah. That's actually like the only real Bigfoot encounter that's been documented that you should listen to because this isn't like somebody saw Bigfoot run across the road.
Yeah.
Um, he was out deer hunting and encountered this juvenile Sasquatch, who, as it turns out, his parents had just been assassinated by junk hunters a while before, and he was too little to fend for himself and was starving. So he made friends with this guy that was out deer hunting, and the guy fed him part of his deer, and then that made him friends. So then he felt responsible, and he had to go back up into the woods as often as possible and check on him and make sure he had enough food and bring him extra food. And spent 5 years with him, basically, with this Sasquatch up in the woods being his best friend until he finally had to go to college and leave the area.
Hmm.
And then here, 2019, he managed to get enough people with enough funding to help him to get up here for one of my expeditions. And when I brought him up to Coloma, Glag and family were there to meet him. So he got to meet him again.
Oh, it kind of reminds me of. I watched a show way back called Living with Wolves about this family that like raised wolves, which sadly was kind of part of the whole reintroduction of wolves, and they were trying to learn how to pack wolves, unnaturally, but like they let the wolves go and they came back and the wolves like were so there they remembered them. Anyway, you know how those things go. They remember them
Yep.
and they have this really neat reunion and everybody cries and you know.
If you ever seen the movie Born Free, just substitute a Bigfoot for the lion cub, and
Yeah,
you pretty much
similar.
got it.
Yeah, totally. Oh man, that's kind of cool. I will check it out. I was going to ask you a question when you said they don't know
No,
where
here's the interesting thing. Let me point this out
Okay.
now, too. He had no idea how old this little Sasquatch was when he ran into it. Because Kevin at that point was 13, 14 years old, I think. And this little Sasquatch that he ran into was already a couple inches taller than him. And over the next 5 years, it grew up to be about 9.5 feet tall and probably over 800 pounds. And we estimated that the point where he met Glag, that Glag was like 4 or 5, and he was already a couple inches taller than Kevin was. So by the time Kevin parted company with him, he was just in his early teens. He still wasn't an adult. He was like just barely a teenager at 9.5 feet. So when Kevin met Glag again, I had that on the episode Glag Lives, where Kevin talks about seeing him up here again. I said, well, so what was it like seeing him again after 30 years? And he said, well, he got bigger. He got a lot bigger. A lot bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, well, how big is he? And he goes, well, he's still got the heavy build. His build's heavier now than it was then. How tall do you think he is? 2 of me and about another couple feet, maybe a little more.
Oh my goodness.
Like 14 feet tall. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Jeez.
Well, you left the tractor. I checked it out. It was 26.5 inches long. Like, okay, that sounds about right for that scale.
My goodness. That would be kind of terrifying at the same time for me.
Yeah, he's the dad, and he's got his 2 sons there to meet Kevin, too, who weren't around. One of them actually got named after him, apparently, which is hilarious. There's a Bigfoot running around.
Kid named Kevin. Wait,
Yeah,
named Kevin?
yeah, well, that's not his real name, but yeah, he's got
Oh,
the
I
real
see. I see.
Kevin
Okay.
is the Bigfoot's real name.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of hilarious. And again, like, sure, he hasn't seen his buddy in like 30 years. His buddy's got a whole family now, including his mate is the female Sasquatch that he met right around the time that Kevin had to leave. So that's apparently who
Well,
he
that's
was
good
hanging
timing.
out with. Yeah. So that I mean, like, they're like humans too. They don't want to be by themselves. They need to have a group environment too. So they don't want to just be
Right.
Joe alone living in a cave. It sucks.
They need community too in that
Yep.
way, I guess.
Yep. So apparently he ended up staying with her, and that's his mate now. And they got at least a couple sons. And Kevin said he got to see 2 of them, but they're both over 10 feet tall.
How long do you think they live, if naturally, in a good normal
Hard
health?
to know for sure. I mean, people that have long interactions with him, some people actually talk to him and ask him questions like this. And then there's ones that have just observed over the period of like decades with the same Bigfoots over and over again and watch how they age and stuff. And it seems like if they're healthy, they live at least as long as we do. Some of them may live over 100 years.
Yeah. Okay, so they don't live any really longer, generally speaking.
Not a whole lot longer. I mean, that's like the difference with little people. Some of those reports of little people, you wonder if those things actually even breed or age.
Yeah.
We had the one lady from the Crow tribe that was on my show talking about her experiences with the Nurumbi here. Her great uncle lived up in a shack in the Bighorn Mountains, and these things visited him. And when he tried to talk to them, they didn't understand English at all. And then he switched to the Crow tongue, which they kind of didn't get. And then he tried the old Crow tongue, which he only knew part of. And the only reason he knew it is because he was one of the elders and was hanging around with like the medicine men and stuff. And they knew the original language. And they knew every word in that language that he said to them. And they tried to speak it back to him, and they said a bunch of words apparently from that language that he didn't know what they were.
Mm-hmm.
And he started thinking to himself, they got to be observing us and listening to what we're saying now.
Yeah.
Why are they using that language from a few hundred years ago? Don't these guys age? Are they from? Are these guys I'm talking to literally, were they here 200-300 years ago?
Yeah. I don't want to know. I don't want to ever encounter them personally. I mean, by that. I mean,
Well, it's nice to know that you can bribe them and be on good terms with them. He gave them a can of peaches, and apparently they thought that was like the greatest thing ever.
Oh, that's easy.
Best thing to and surpassing canned beer. And then he brought up a couple weeks later. He came back with one of his other little Nurumbi friends and wanted him to give him peaches too. So,
Well,
and
that's
then
all
in
it
the winter
takes.
in the winter when he was snowed in and he couldn't get out of his cabin, he heard this knock on the door, and he pried the door far enough because they had snow buried up 5 feet on it, so you like barely shove it open, look out the top, and piled on the snowbank above the door right next to the cabin is a dead deer. Where'd that come from?
They're gifting back.
Yeah,
Kind of like how
they
your
want him
cats
to
bring
survive
back
and
animals.
Get more peaches for next summer.
You have deer, we want peaches.
Yeah. He was highly suspect of it. Well, this deer just die of a disease right next to our
That's
cabin because of the blizzard,
I would
So
wonder.
he moved enough snow to drag it into the cabin over the snowbank, and he couldn't find any wounds or marks on it or anything. So he, gutted it out. And in the process of doing that, then he found what killed it. There was a teeny little arrow about 6 inches long right in the middle of its heart.
Oh, jeez, that's a trip.
So, yeah, then he figured out, oh, it's a neurobean. They gave me a deer to eat. This thing isn't diseased or poisoned or anything, hopefully. I should be able to survive on this. And apparently needed it, too, because it was a good, from what I heard, if I remember right, she said it was like over a week before he could really dig himself out and get out of there again.
Yeah, if you're talking about a shack up in the mountains like that.
Yeah, during the winter when he shouldn't really have been up there anyway, but. And then after his family heard about not only, you shouldn't be up there just because you're getting old in these winters and you're up in the middle of the bighorns in the winter, what are you thinking? Oh, yeah, the little people come and visit me. What? No, you're coming back to town. That's it.
Yeah, but
All
they
fine.
like the canned peaches.
Yeah, they'll bring me another deer if I start starving or anything. Oh, no, 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 no. You're coming back to town now.
But they like the canned peaches. I'm totally not crazy.
Yeah. No, with his family, some of them had already seen him, so they
Oh, I
they didn't
see.
think he was crazy. They knew exactly what he was dealing with. They were
Yeah.
hyper concerned that he was going to get too friendly with them, and they were going to take him to show where they lived, and he would never be seen again.
Oh, so when they take you to show you where they live, is that like death or is that something else?
Well, according to all the legends, and this includes the little people over in Europe and stuff too. Remember, I'm trying to think of the one over on the East Coast, the old story about the guy going and playing nine pins and getting drunk with the little people, and then when he woke up, it was like 100 years later, and he had this really long beard, and nobody recognized him. They had all died a long time ago and stuff. And all of this stems from older stories that go back all over Europe, especially Northern Europe and the British Isles. That yeah, you can make friends with the little people, but if don't eat anything they offer you.
Even a
Don't
deer?
beer. No, no, no. Like processed food.
Oh.
If they give you, beer, especially, Henry Hudson had a report on that. They ran into the dwarves over in the Hudson Valley when they were surveying it. The guy that named the Hudson Valley because like
Uh-huh.
first European that saw it. They ran into a group of dwarves. They heard people on shore making noise and having some kind of shindig. So they put ashore and put their couple of canoes up on shore and went in to investigate. And there was these little dwarf-looking guys about 3 feet tall. They were having a big party and drinking some kind of beer. And they immediately offered them the beer. Now, Henry had heard these stories from Europe, and he only took a couple sips, and then he started observing his crew, who were getting incredibly sloshed immediately.
Oh.
And he got really apprehensive and put a stop to it and went, okay, guys, well, I guess that's it. We got to go now. They're all like, no, we want to hang around. No, 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 I think we need to go leave now. And he got them out of there. But some of these reports, especially like Ireland and England and stuff, where you accept the invitation to go visit the little people underground, time
Oh.
flows differently there.
I saw a
So
movie about
you
that.
may come back again and only seem like you spent one evening there partying with them or whatever, and when you come back, it's 100 years later. Or you may just have so much fun there that you just kind of forget that you should come back at some point, and you never do.
I saw a movie on that. It was really cheesy, but again, even the cheesy movies will have like a lot of truth to them. And these people had found like a cave where it looked like a guy was standing still just inside the entrance. But when you went in, like you went through this kind of force field like thing, and then the guy just walks away as if he wasn't just standing still. And you're like, what the heck? But everybody's moving way, way, way slower. So when they finally come out, yeah, it had been like 100 years, and the car they had parked, like trees had grown through it and all around it, and they're like, what?
Uh huh. Yeah. This kind of weird stuff happens. You get other reports of that with like transient portals too, where I've heard several of these. The most gripping one is this guy who was winter hunting and he's walking up this rise on a hill tracking a game animal. And he's following the trail. When he gets up to the top of the hill, he takes a couple steps and he looks up and he's like, there's no snow. He doesn't see the animal's tracks. He's in a jungle somewhere. He's nowhere near where he just was 2 steps ago. He's
Hmm.
in a jungle somewhere. There's no snow. He's not on a hill
Yeah.
anymore. He's so shocked he takes 2 steps backwards and he's back on the hill again. Well, thank God he didn't try and wander off and didn't turn around or anything. He took 2 steps back and went right back through that portal before it closed or moved. and
Right.
he's back on Earth again. He could have been somewhere else on Earth, or he could have just been completely a different place entirely.
Hollow Earth, maybe.
Hollow Earth, or,
Agartha
or
or something.
Earth on a different vibrational frequency, which is where a lot of these things are coming from. They actually live here, but not on our vibrational frequency.
Okay. Well, I'm not necessarily normally beholden to time, but my kids start bugging me and asking a lot of questions and when I'm going to be done after we get about an hour into something usually. So I think we had a good time talking about our gym days, our exercise days, and I think that was really fun to segue into the how Bigfoot, how strong and how muscular and their abilities, and it was very interesting stuff. And I think that was very clever on your part.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. But it is a valid point that people ascribe a lot of the abilities that people look at and think they're just magical. It's like, well, if you're doing the same things as them and you are training and stuff all the time, you
Right.
can do these really magical things too. There's human examples of that. A guy who's a longbowman expert, and they got a high-speed video of somebody throwing an aspirin in the air, and he shoots it out of the air with a longbow. The wobble on the arrow is three
Jeez.
times the diameter of the aspirin. So that's like retardedly impossible, but there's a video of him doing
Yeah.
it.
All right. And there was a show that that guy. Uh, oh my gosh, forgive me. I should be able to think of it. He was the comic book creator,
Oh, Stan Lee,
Stan Lee.
love that guy.
Yeah, he made a show about superhumans and some of their abilities because he had made the show about Unbreakable. Didn't he? Was he part of No. He had done something anyway about
Oh, he was
superhuman.
involved in so many. He did a earlier TV show called Who Wants to Be a Superhero, which is sort of like a reality TV show. And it was like, if you wanted to be a superhero, what kind of powers would you have, and what would you do, and how would you fight crime? And he would set up things that they would just run into that they didn't realize were setups, and people would be filming them. Then he'd gauge what their reaction was to decide how good of a superhero they'd be.
Yeah, and then he did one where he went and found people who actually had like these seemingly
Actual
superheroes. Yeah,
superpowers, yeah.
right. And it was very interesting. So, yeah, very, very curious. Well, anything that we didn't get to that you wanted to say before we give everybody a good night?
Well, thanks everybody for spending some time with us. I hope you all enjoyed it. And I have a couple shows that are actually in the works right now, should be out very shortly. I've been kind of held up on one trying to get the proper files together. And then the other one was like, there are no files. So I had to go cobble together a bunch of pictures. The guest only had about 25, 30 to send me. But you guys will like it. Episode 111 coming up here. And you'll probably like this too, Aaron.
Yeah.
It's two guys that do cryptid research over in western Idaho by the Snake River Canyon. And they're also both Lutheran pastors that do deliverance ministries. So
Oh, yeah, we'll
they're
have to
going to
check
tell
that
us
out.
all about the cryptids over there. And then the second half of the show, they're going to talk about grabbing the minions of evil and throwing them into God's flaming dumpster.
All right, I want to check that out for sure. So you guys go to World Bigfoot Radio, which all of this information is in the description box. I don't know if people know this, but there's a little box underneath the video. It's called a description box where you can find World Bigfoot Radio's YouTube. I don't have your I don't have your Odyssey or your other links, but
Oh yeah, you can find me on all those other platforms: Odyssey, BitChute, Bright Eon, Rumble. I'm on all of them too.
yeah, and I bet if you went to his page, you could probably find those links. But I've definitely got the YouTube link just below this video that you're watching called the description box. A lot of people don't know what that is. So,
Yeah, a lot of followers on my channel have not quite figured that out either. Duke, how do I get a hold of you? My email's in the description box on every video I turn out.
don't you have any backup channels? Yeah, about 7 of them is in the description box below the
Yeah,
video.
exactly. Yeah, actually, I put that in the community tab like a week ago, a link to that exclusive video over on Rumble that's never going to be on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, you should get a backup in case anything happens to your YouTube, man.
Yeah, like everything I've turned out, including stuff that's already been banned off YouTube, is already on Odyssey.
Mhm. And me too now. I have Odyssey too because it backs up
It's
better than anything.
Yes, it's awesome. It works really good. It's not glitchy at all. And here's the best thing: they're about to enable live streaming.
Yay! That's gonna be
Got,
perfect. I say we
they've got
move all the
salty
way over.
cracker over there. Salty Cracker is beta testing it for him right now. He's already done one,
Good.
and he's going to be doing more. And as soon as they got what little glitches they have there, apparently they're having problems with the chat thing on it right now. So as soon as they get that ironed out, it'll be up and running because he can already live stream on it. The chat just didn't work properly, so they're fixing that as fast as they can.
Well, if that's the case, I'm going to really urge my actual listeners who do come and listen to move over to that because there's only a matter of time with YouTube. It's just going to be gone.
Yep. Yeah, and realistically, you should be getting, 2, 3 thousand views in a day with the content that you're turning out. And
Right?
they're doing everything they can to suppress you over here on this platform. And I saw the same thing. When I was doing Glag Saga, I would get 7 or 8 thousand views in a day on one of those episodes. And now it's like I can turn out a really good show and I don't get, 3,000 views in 3 days.
Yep. Well, I get 200 to 300, so that's good enough. And I have people like you on, and I get a couple hundred more. So maybe if we move over, it'll get some more. And really, we just want to reach people who haven't heard these things and want good information. It's not for the self-fame. Where Duke and I aren't trying to become multimillionaires and travel the world and be famous. In fact, that's really not what we want to do at all. We want to just stay in Montana and
Yeah.
maybe look for some Bigfoot and talk
We're
about them
hermits.
too.
We're hermits at heart that just have a heart wanting to help people and give them information and be as inconspicuous and as little known as possible
That's
in the
true.
process. That totally didn't work. I actually told the first person that I was on their show with repeatedly, by the way. I said, if I'd have known what was going to happen, I would have used a fake name and never let anybody know who I was and never put my face on camera ever.
Yeah. And then there's me. I'm like, here's my full name, and here's my face, and here's where I live, and but the Lord has been good and protected me and my children, and I pray about that all the time. And I think we have a good community. I very rarely get trolls, and I don't even really need. I love having mods because it's a good idea, but almost never need them.
Yeah, usually it's just your mods busy trading little intricate details on what it is that you're talking about in the background while you're talking about it,
Yeah.
which is kind of humorous because it's like, no, you don't have any trolls.
No.
Yeah. I remember one live stream Kevin did where he had 17 trolls show up during 1 hour long live stream. And he already had me and 3 other bloodthirsty mods there that absolutely hate trolls. So we're not only deleting their comments, but ridiculing them in the comment section as soon as we would do it. And Kev was trying to do this live stream, and he's just reading the comments. He's scrolling down. He started smiling, and he's like, well, I can see you got some trolls in here tonight.
Yeah.
Too bad
Yeah.
I can't see what any of them are posting because my mods are so fast they're taking
on
them
it.
down. I can see what my mods are saying back to them, and I can't read most of that.
That's for the best. That's for the best, because if I see what the trolls are saying, I might get all like frenzied, and you can't feed the trolls because they just come back worse. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you're willing to come on my show and talk about these things with me, and that you're not impatient in my level of understanding of the cryptids, and that we have
No,
fun
no.
doing it.
And I try to encourage people to check your show out too. I was just talking to one of my upcoming guests earlier today, and I said, "Are you going to watch Erin's show?" And they said, "What? No, Erin Lane Moffat. I'm on her channel." "Oh yeah, I watch her show just about every week. I like
Oh,
the
great.
Solomon Report." And I'm like, "There you go.
Oh, that's so
Let,
nice.
let's get some more people on it. All the people that are enjoy my show and watch it and stuff, and of the Christian disposition." You should be watching Erin's show every week because it's excellent.
Oh, you are
Solomon
just a
Report is
blessing.
excellent. NPC 3114. And Erin, totally awesome.
And that's tomorrow night, guys, at 6 p.m. So maybe I'll have my computer streaming from the new computer by then. I hope so. I'll pray for that.
All right, I'll pray for it too, hon. You get all that put together. I know how it is fighting with new tech stuff. I get to do it all the time when they surprisingly change something that worked perfectly fine, but now they changed it to something different for some reason.
Sorry, that password is incorrect. Please pick a new password. Sorry, you can't use the password that was your previous password.
Yeah.
What? All right. Well, you have a good night, and bless you for being here. And I'm going to have you back sooner than later if you're cool with that.
No problem, dear. Whenever you think of another weird idea to have me on the
I
show,
know, right?
just give me a call. This cryptid and workout thing is kind of a stretch, but we managed to pull it out.
And it was fun.
But yeah, it was a total blast. I always enjoy being on the show with you. I'm a fan of your show too. So as you notice, I pop up and chat on your show and say nice things too.
I know. I
I
see
know
it and
there's
I
never any
appreciate
trolls
it.
there for me to swat, so I just
No.
get to listen to you all the
Yep.
time. But
You just get to hang out and not have to worry about trolls. But all
I know,
right,
it's good.
we'll pick a fun. And Gary Wayne will be on near the 17th. I think the 19th, and we're gonna do St. Patrick's Day special. So check that out too, you guys. And with that, I'll say goodnight, Duke, and be blessed. I'm going to work on my new computer.
Night all. Don't hug the Wookiees. Love you guys.
Okay. Peace. Peace out.
Peace out.
Watch me sing.